Hey guys, it's Danny. Alrighty, today we're gonna make another then and now type of video. I know you guys really like these types of videos, and today we're gonna focus on the Dendrobium Phalaenopsis or bigibbum types. This is my collection. It's not my entire collection. I do have a few more which I will bring. I'll talk about. And I know I talked a little bit about them when we made the Outside Orchids video, but every day I go on my terrace and I take a look at these guys and I'm absolutely blown away by how well they actually did outside. So I really want to show them to you and make a little comparison to how they actually did in the growth space. I put these orchids outside for the past 2, maximum 3 months, and the progress and actually the impact is absolutely unbelievable. It's bonkers, you guys. I was not expecting it. So I really do want to talk about them and show you what I actually mean, show you how they look like right now in comparison to how they used to. So first of all, it is Dendrobium Phalaenopsis season right now. Everybody is in spike. These guys can bloom once a year, or as it turns out, twice a year as well if you have warm enough temperatures. So right now everybody kind of finished growing their canes and is starting to produce flower spikes, but the flower spikes, oh boy, they're not tiny. They're not necessarily even singular flower spikes. And not only the new canes are flowering, also the older canes are starting to flower. This is something I didn't really experience in the past with these orchids. And let's remember a few of them because I will make some comparison with individuals. Let's remember the Dendrobium happinesses, the blue happiness and the purple happiness. This is a commercial name. I don't think it is registered. The last time I checked, I believe it wasn't. So these two orchids were the very first Dendrobium Phalaenopsis types that I purchased here. I never had a big collection of these orchids. And a while back, IKEA used to bring them here. A little spoiler, IKEA didn't bring any other type of orchid except Phalaenopsis in a year now, so I think the party's over. But that's that. So most of these orchids are from IKEA. The blue happiness was in very poor condition. He absolutely did not have roots, and I do believe I have footage of that. I also have the video. Check it down below. I'll link you to all these videos that I'm gonna talk about right now, just so you see the date when it was uploaded, and you can have a better estimation of the time it took for it to reach this size. So the blue happiness was absolutely horrible looking, had no roots. I really didn't think he would make it, while the blue happiness looked a little bit better. Now afterwards I did purchase quite a few other Dendrobium Phalaenopsis from IKEA, but all of them came from the discount aisle because IKEA doesn't have cheap orchids. All of these orchids were like 15 or 20 euros full price, and that's a little bit too much in my opinion for the state they were in anyway, so I just waited for them to be discounted. Most of them did not have roots, and this was happening last year. At the beginning of this year, I think I purchased 1 or 2 more Dendrobium Phalaenopsis types. Again, not in perfect condition. So for some of these orchids, it is actually the first new growth. And well, to my surprise, the ones that grew outside their first growth grew a larger new growth, and they're blooming as well. I think everybody's blooming right now. One of them might actually have a keiki, but I'll show them to you. It's a little glitch, but all of these orchids are blooming now. So let me just show you the blue happiness. Can you recognize him? You're a little bright, aren't you? So being that these were the first ones, obviously they're the biggest ones. Well, let's see the evolution. First we created these tiny little growths here. These were the very first growths it ever created. Then we moved on to something bigger, and now these are the new growths we're dealing with. Look at that. Can you believe it? He's blooming on both of these growths. Last year he didn't actually bloom, so it took an entire year for him to bounce back, but the growth was just so slow. I grew him in my growing space and it just took his time. Things grew very slow, but here he is. This is my Dendrobium blue happiness. Look at that root system and just how vigorous he is. Now let's look at the purple happiness. This is him. So last year he bloomed on this cane, and would you look at that, we have another new flower spike on this guy, and of course on his newest cane we have a flower spike developing as well, and overall the orchid is looking pretty good. But this guy was already in okayish condition. Let's look at the other guys. This one was one of the discounted orchids from IKEA. And what do we notice? We have a double spike this year on the top of the newest cane. And not only, we have another new cane which is producing a flower spike as well. And overall, again, the orchid is looking really good. I'm hoping the video is not very shaky. Let's get to the other one. This is the banana chocolate. It's again another discounted one. It created one new growth, and you can see how tiny it is. It didn't bloom. Well, look at the new growth this year, and ta-da, we do have a flower spike. On this guy, only one, but it's okay. Let's look at another one. I think this is, oh, I know which one this is. This is one that I purchased this year. It is the Polar Fire, actually. So I purchased him at the beginning of the year. He created only one new growth for me. And mind you, the root system was not in perfect condition. None of these orchids had perfect roots or anything. Look at that new growth. It's actually not bigger than the previous growth, but the same size, which was not supposed to happen. It's very normal for new orchids to take their time, adjust to the new environment, and as a result have smaller growths, but not with this guy. So here we have him. We have a flower spike. This one is another one that I purchased at the beginning of this year. This one I need to hydrate a little bit more because I repotted him actually pretty recently. So I need to take care of him. He's slightly dehydrated, but he has roots. I do have a problem with these pots as well. We'll get to that. But look at this. What is this spikage right here? We have 3 on this growth. We have 2 on the other growth. We have spikes coming out from the previous growths. It's just unbelievable. Again, he was kept outside, and this is the very first growth in my care. It's the next growth. It should have been smaller, but it's not. And here, okay, this is the Purple Happiness. This, I believe, is the Splash Dendrobium from IKEA. This is the only one who's growing something which doesn't really look like a spike. Hopefully it becomes a spike and it's not a keiki, but again, he looks very nice. And yeah, and this is actually my oldest Dendrobium Phalaenopsis. I received him a lot of years ago, and every year he produced very tiny growths with 2 flowers, 3 flowers. He never excelled, except this year. This year he produced a very large growth, as you can see here, and a really beautiful flower spike. Now this guy was in the sun the most, so he lost a few leaves, but that's okay. He already started to produce a new growth right there. And I do have another new growth on the Dendrobium which was already in bloom, the white one, and if I'm not mistaken, I do see some eyes swelling on the others as well. This is again a very new thing for me because Dendrobium Phalaenopsis for me only grew 1 new growth per year in my grow space, and I always said, oh, they grow so slow. This year they're making 2 new growths. They bloom, they do their thing, and then immediately after they start a new growth, which is very surprising. Now, with all of these orchids, I didn't really change anything. I didn't change my fertilizer regime, didn't change watering. Of course, I'm using the same osmosis water. I only changed the location from inside the growing space to outside. I keep them in an eastern location, and some of them got a little bit too much sun, and you can see there we have some leaves falling. I do have some leaf burn here and there on this guy as well, here actually. But these stuff happen. It's trial and error until I figure out where I need to put them. But overall, just the progress is absolutely mind-boggling. As a house plant, of course, they will do okay in your home as well. They're very tolerant plants, but I do believe they will grow slower than if you would keep them outside. And I also believe they will not bloom so abundantly inside a growing space than they do outside. And keep in mind, they have been outside only for the past 3 months or so, time in which they actually matured the growths. It was perfect timing. When they were growing their growths, I put them outside, so they benefited from that boost. And I do believe this is pretty much the secret with them. And you don't actually have to live in a subtropical climate to keep them outside. In a temperate zone, if you can actually put them outside your windowsill or even in your garden. Of course, don't put them in super direct sunshine. You can see they can still burn. I keep mine in direct sunshine until 9-10 o'clock, depends on the sun. Now it's going away faster. And then they have bright shade. They get a little bit more sun in the evening when the sun sets and it goes low enough. But that's it. Other than that, they do have bright shade. So if you can provide something like that for them, do a little test. Make sure that you gradually get them adjusted. Don't put them in the sun directly. They will get burned. But try this test. Try to see if your orchids will respond in the same way if you've never done it, if you've never had super great success with them. And of course, keep in mind they are big drinkers, especially when they grow. They create big root systems, they like a lot of water, but of course, well-draining medium as well. Don't be afraid to water them, to fertilize them. They love it, just don't keep them soggy. That's the only rule. And there we have it. Let me know how it goes. Alrighty, so now let's look at the 3 dendrobiums that I received from Equagenera from a friend. They come from the USA actually, and if you remember, they arrived to me in not so good condition. They spent a lot on transport, you can imagine. They traveled the world, and I do believe they were packed slightly moist. Therefore, they kind of lost all of their leaves, and paradoxically, the roots were shriveled due to dehydration. Well, let's just take a look at them now. And here they are. Don't they look just gorgeous? I really do like these new growths. So if you remember with them, in the very first week since I had them, they started to produce new growth. And that was just luck. They were just in the right moment for producing new growth. So these two had mature new growths. They were supposed to create new growth, and they did. But the one in the back, he was kind of just maturing this cane, and what happened was on transport the top got broken. So even if it doesn't really show, it is broken. It will not bloom from there. But for him it was time to produce roots, so that's what he did. He produced roots. But now he's producing a new growth as well. So he's getting into the rhythm just like the other guys, but he is the one with the most roots actually. So let's just take them one by one, and I'll put on a corner of the screen the footage with the initial video. This is Dendrobium Piranha Sunday. Beautiful, beautiful dendrobium. All of these are just beautiful. They're very exotic. And as you can see, I don't have much shriveling going on. Well, this guy was shriveled at some point, but in the meantime, he did create a nice root system, so I don't have any more issues with this guy. I can consider him absolutely saved. We're working on a new growth right now. Yeah, there's nothing much to say. He's absolutely okay. The next one, this one was a little bit more problematic because you see what happened here? This was the new cane, but it had some rotting at the top and it was starting to advance downwards. So I had to cut this cane, put some cinnamon here because that was an infection. Whatever advances and looks brown, mushy, it's pretty much an infection and you need to remove it. So ever since I cut it, the pseudobulb didn't die off anymore, and that's great because at the base we have the new growth. If I would have let it go on with the infection, I could have lost these new growths. But overall, he's okay. This is Kultana Fancy, another beautiful one. Just Google these pictures, you're gonna be blown away. So he's doing okay. The new growth have started to produce roots, and as you can see, they are green, they're absorbing water. He's doing great as well, but he is the one with the smallest new growths, and that's normal. He only has 2 little canes here to work with, one of which I cut, so it's okay. This one will take a little bit longer, but that's perfectly fine. And this one is one that I always wanted to have again. This is Dendrobium Piranha Green Star. It's the green dendrobium. Look at the new growths on this guy. Well, he has more pseudobulbs, but as you can see, we have some issues with this pseudobulb. And I will do what I did with the other pseudobulb. I will cut into healthy growth, maybe here, and then put some cinnamon or something to dry out that cut, and hey presto. Here I have a dried pseudobulb, but this didn't advance in a lot of time. This is not an active infection. So if something just dries up but it doesn't really advance, that's okay. It's not a reason for worry. You don't necessarily need to cut anything. What I want to do is let this completely dry off on its own, let the orchid seal it properly on its own, and then cut it off. No need to intervene with this one. But that one is problematic. I will have to intervene because it will continue to go downwards, and I don't want these really beautiful growths to have anything affecting them. So you can see I have 3 growths here, and I do, the leaves are actually super stiff. Did you see that? I was trying to pull out the leaf and all the orchid moved. So yeah, I do have tiny little roots, as you can see. Not a very dehydrated orchid, so we have roots, we're okay. We're on the way to recovery. And here we have them. Do you actually see the top of the medium? It's kind of wet, right? Well, these orchids are currently residing in the growth space. One thing I would not put outside in the harsh elements is a recovering orchid. I had these initially outside and I didn't like it. The top of the medium was drying out, it was not promoting roots. it was not okay for them. So I moved them in until they have a decent root system and they establish they're gonna sit inside, and it's okay. This year I'm just going to enjoy the greenery, it's fine. Next year, however, they will go outside. Now this is the problem with the outside world, and I'll go back to my previous dendrobium. I told you I have an issue with the pots. Now these dendrobiums, being outside orchids, were among the very first to be converted to self-watering pots. This one was actually in its original pot, in its original medium, and I repotted him a month and a half ago or something, or 2 months ago. And as you can see, the pots and the masks don't really fit. First I got 2 small pots, and as you can see, this sunk in. I need to change it. And this one is too high, it sits too much on top. And being that this came out of a standard 13 centimeter pot, this is too high for it. And the root system only goes to about here or so. And if you remember, in one of the videos of this week, I told you that I don't like to put a layer of medium on the bottom with self-watering pots. I like the roots to be next to the wick, just because roots are wicking as well. So especially with orchids I just repot, I like to put the roots where the moisture is. With this guy I didn't do it, and he got super dehydrated. It was a little bit of a mistake, so right now I'm going to change this. I'm going to place him in a shallower pot. This one is too big for it, in the sense of too tall, not too big necessarily. I want the roots to touch the bottom just so he gets hydrated, but keep in mind this can happen with self-watering pots with orchids which do not have a proper root system. You could get away if your environment is temperate. With those ones, of course, I got away with it, but these ones are sitting outside, the top dries, it's very ventilated and very hot. So yeah, keep that in mind. If you ever want to try this out, make sure that the pot you're working with is not too tall for them, because they might just not get enough hydration if the environment doesn't promote a wet top layer, right? And that's about it on my Dendrobium Phalaenopsis. I will start to work on these 2 and change the pots. I found a whole array of pots and masks that can work, so I'm happy about that, but there we have it. This is my Then and Now Dendrobium Phalaenopsis edition, and I am very surprised and super happy about the result. Alrighty, so thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. And you know the drill, if you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, tutorials, then and nows, of course, and other orchid related topics. And if you like YouTube to notify you whenever I upload a new video, just turn on all notifications for my channel. And with that said, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye!